Hello and welcome to Tech Deals Graphics Card Performance Comparison. We are testing two different graphics cards today. The Asus Republic of Gamers Strix GeForce GTX 1070 versus the EVGA for the win GeForce GTX 1080. We are testing these cards today installed in the same computer. The $1,500 custom build PC with the Intel i7-7700k CPU running at 5 GHz. There is a complete video series on this custom build linked in the video description below. Parts overview, the behind the scenes Y vlog, the build video, system setup, Windows installation, Windows performance review, many game tests, storage performance, all linked in the video description below. We are playing today at two different resolutions. The first set of tests will be at 1440p at high detail, and the second will be at 2160p, otherwise known as 4K, at medium detail. Anti-aliasing is turned on and VSync is turned off. Fraps was used for the game performance numbers you will see at the end of this video. It was not used to record the video you're watching. Instead, NVIDIA's Shadowplay was used for video capture. Shadowplay video capture does reduce the game performance on average by about 5%, so you will get slightly better performance than the numbers you see in this video. The numbers in green at the top left corner of the screen are from Msi Afterburner, a free program that you can download and run and watch your real-time game performance numbers just like we are seeing right here. Now, if you look at those numbers, you will see the first line is our graphics card. We're using 100% or 99% really of our graphics card compute performance. Basically, the graphics card is the limitation to more frame rate. The temperature is running a very cool 62 degrees, and the fan speed is at 42% or 1500 RPM. Notice that the clock speed is nearly 2 GHz. Now, this graphics card does not come from the factory at 2 GHz. However, I have not manually overclocked it. Please note, GPU boost on the NVIDIA 10 series cards auto overclocks the cards. You will see that both of these cards run at about 2 GHz. That is GPU boost in action. I have not turned the speed up. The second line is our VRAM. We're only using about 2 GB of VRAM, so we definitely don't need the 8. We're not VRAM limited in any way. Our CPU usage, likewise, is not a limiting factor. We're using less than 50% of our CPU. In this particular game, an i5 overclocked to 5 GHz would give us the same performance as the i7 because we simply don't need more than 4 threads. In fact, we often only need 2 to 3 threads to run The Witcher 3. So if you're debating between an i5 and an i7, in games such as Battlefield 1, the i7 makes a difference. In The Witcher 3, it really doesn't, at least not in this portion of the game. Main system RAM usage is very light. We're less than 5 GB. I've often said that you should have at least 16 gigs of RAM, and for a $1,500 computer, that's true. However, The Witcher 3 will play just fine in 8 GB of RAM. It clearly does not need 16, so if by chance you only have 8 at the moment, you'll be just fine. Now let's transition and see what it looks like on the GTX 1080. Same thing. 99% GPU usage. We are still limited by our graphics card. The fan speed is going to be slightly different. It is in fact a different card. This card has 2 fans instead of the 3 fans on the Asus card, but the clock speed's about the same. The temperature is pretty close to being the same. VRAM usage is slightly higher, but it's about the same, and our CPU usage again is very respectable. You could absolutely play this at 1440p on an i5. RAM usage likewise is about the same, but take a look at the real-time frame rate. It is noticeably better. The GeForce GTX 1080 is between 20 to 30% faster on average than a 1070. Now, how much faster is going to depend upon the game and the situation, but in general, you can expect between a 20 to 30% performance improvement for spending the extra $200 or so that it costs to upgrade from a 1070 to a 1080. And that's ultimately why I'm doing these videos, is it worth spending the money? Now, that's a personal choice, but I'm doing both 1440p and 2160p, otherwise known as 4K, so you get an idea of what type of jump in performance you can expect when you make that move. I will do, in an upcoming series of videos, 1070 SLI versus 1080 SLI. I'm not putting those into one video, it would make them too long, but I will do those in the future so that you can use that as a comparison to see whether or not it's worth adding a second graphics card, and if so, in which games do you see that performance improvement in. Now let's take a look at 4K. Now I am trimming these videos quite short. I recorded more than what you're watching here, but I'm trying to keep these game performance and graphics card performance videos to a reasonable length because people have said they don't want to watch a 30-minute single game video. So let me know what you think in the comments below as to the length of these new videos and whether or not you're happy with them. So here we are at 4K 2160p. We are on the GTX 1070. 100% GPU usage because we are GPU limited. The fan speed is basically the same as it was on the 1440p run, and our clock speed is about 2 gigahertz. Now our VRAM usage is higher. We were at 2 gigabytes of VRAM usage at 1440. Now we're at just under 3. But that makes sense. We're a much higher resolution, so it makes sense you'd be using more VRAM, but we are not remotely VRAM limited. Look at our CPU usage. We're barely using over 2 cores. We are getting higher frame rate. However, we are completely GPU limited. This game at 4K would just love to absolutely have 2 of these cards in SLI. And I will definitely do The Witcher 3 in SLI so you can see that difference. Main system RAM, still totally respectable. Look at our real-time frame rate. We are in the mid-40s at the moment. That's not bad, but what you really need to do is compare that to the 1080 to see what kind of performance improvement you'll get. It is also worth noting we are in a fairly early level to this game. This is not the middle of the game. There are more complex sections to The Witcher 3. Now you might be asking, why am I not showing those to you? Because this is a really easy area to run around and test. There's a lot of grass, there's a lot of trees, there's a lot of water. It's very easy to film this over and over. That, and I haven't finished The Witcher 3. So I don't have footage and save games from every part of the game in more complex areas. So if you are a Witcher 3 expert, simply take your knowledge of the game, take this performance section you're seeing right here, and extrapolate it to the more complex areas of the game. Finally, we are playing at medium detail, and this is worth making a note. You cannot directly compare well, you can, but keep in mind that the 1440p was at high detail. This is at medium. So you're not looking at the same graphic quality. If you really want to play The Witcher 3 at high detail at 4K, you need a pair of 1080s and SLI. I mean, that's the long and short of it. You really do. But it's playable at medium, mostly on a 1080. Let's go take a look at that. And here we are on the GTX 1080. Again, our GPU usage is at 100%. Our VRAM usage is just under 3 gigabytes. But take a look at our frame rate. We're at 60 frames per second. Now, in terms of total frame rate improvement, the actual number, we're actually only running about 10 to 15 frames per second faster than we were on the 1070. But because of where the actual frame rate lies, going from the mid-40s to the high 50s is a noticeable smoothness improvement, especially in a combat game such as The Witcher 3 that entails repeated action commands, sword fighting. If you drop much below 60 frames per second, you start getting into situations where in busy parts of the game, it's going to get laggy and your input on the controls is going to get behind what's happening on the screen. You actually will play better if the game is running faster. Now we're at medium detail. You could absolutely turn it down to low, or you could customize, turn anti-aliasing off, for example, which actually, in my opinion, at 4K is unnecessary. I think anti-aliasing is just simply not needed at 4K. But I use the detail presets because it's easy to make sure that I use the same settings every single time. So, medium detail, turn anti-aliasing off, and you'll get a little bit better performance. We're at 57, 58 right now. That's not bad. Especially, look at all this foliage. Look at all this grass and the trees blowing in the wind. This is a gorgeous game. I have to say, of all the games that I've played, this might be one of the prettiest. It is, look at that. That's beautiful. I don't want to say I'm speechless, but it's just absolutely gorgeous. I'm impressed at how pretty this game really, really is. As I said before, if you want to play this game at higher ultra detail and you want to play at 4K, you will absolutely need 2 1080 graphics cards, and that's a lot of money to spend. Really, 1440p is kind of the sweet spot in gaming at the moment. You can do 4K, but either compromises in detail settings, compromises in frame rate, or just throw a whole lot of money at the problem, quite frankly. Now, I have two 1080s, and I've done a couple of games in SLI on the 1080, and yes, it is a noticeable improvement at 4K. But honestly, that is a ton of money to spend. Now, when I put together my i7-7800k machine, I put one 1080 in and then a second 1080 in, and then I did some playing at 4K. Honestly, I took one of the 1080s out, which is actually what you're watching right here, is one of the 1080s out of my 4K machine, and I play at 1440p. Do I notice a difference? Yeah, a little bit, but a single 1080 plays ultra or high at 1440p beautifully in almost every situation, whereas 4K just requires a tremendous amount of graphics performance. So I've just decided to live with 1440p gaming personally until the graphics cards get a little faster. We'll see how it comes with the next generation, which should be out in about 6 months or so. But at the moment, it's a tall order to do 4K at higher ultra detail in most modern games. All right, enough of that. Let's go look at the results. And here we are. First, let's look at the 1440p numbers. On the 1070, we had an average of 65 frames per second, a minimum of 57, and a max of 77. On the 1080, this improved to 81, 70, and 93. A fairly respectable across-the-board improvement, just what you would expect to see. Please note this is at high detail. At ultra detail, the 1080 will still average over 60 frames per second at 1440p, but I did not run ultra because we're at the beginning of the game. In more intense areas further on in The Witcher 3, you would not maintain these numbers, so I'm hedging a bit because of that. The 1080 should maintain 60 plus frames per second average throughout all of The Witcher 3 on high detail. It wouldn't at ultra. The 1070 may need to come down to medium detail in some of those busy areas, but it will still be completely playable at high detail, just not at 60 frames per second. The average will drop below that later in the game. What about 4K resolution? The 1070 will do it, but we really actually only averaged 44 frames per second. And that's why this testing is so important. It looks smooth and you think you can play it fine, but we had a minimum of 38. These numbers will be even less later in the game, and these numbers are at medium detail, not high. Now you can lower the game to low detail, but you really start to give up a lot when you do that. The 1080 maintains 57, 51, and 66 frames per second respectively. Much better, but again, those numbers won't hold later in the game either. That may also need to come down to low detail. If you want to play The Witcher 3 at 4K resolution, you can do it. You almost need 2 graphics cards or wait for the next gen cards. It's rough. It's one of those games that just has a lot of demand for graphics performance. Like this video if you like it, share it with your friends if you loved it. Remember to subscribe to my channel with the big huge red button directly below the video. Post your comments below the video, and as always, check out the video description. Links to both of these graphics cards, links to all the GTX 1070 and 1080 graphics cards to Amazon and Newegg will be in the video description below. Links to my full playlist on this $1,500 i7-7700k build will be down there. Please check those out. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching my video. I will see you next time.